Hi, it's Teresa from Gemma's house, and here we are, part 2 of my wall shelf project. So where we last left off, I wasn't happy with the proportion of the shelves. I removed the top brackets and moved them down a little more than 3/4 of an inch. So these two boards, I just put them here to show you the heights, and I measured them and I'm happier now with these heights, and this is the way it's going to stay, and I will deal with whatever I end up with because I have a lot of things that I could display on these shelves, so I'll just work with them whatever way they turn out. So what I'm going to do next is cut the two 6-foot long boards, and I'll join them in the middle with some adhesive. This is my setup. These are just regular plastic sawhorse legs you can buy at the home improvement store. And then I had made this tabletop out of two pine boards. I glued them together, and then I put a trim board on the front and back to keep them together, and then I just whitewashed them, and I use them on top of these cabinets. So anyway, it makes a nice saw table. Just if you're interested, this is my saw. I've had this for a long time, maybe 10-12 years, and it's always worked great for me. It's a pretty simple one, and it was inexpensive too, and it just does whatever home improvement projects I've needed it for. So I have my tools ready that I might need for this. Another thing I did was to cover my furnace register here, and I put a towel in front of the door so that the wood dust doesn't get out of this room. And of course Gemma is on the other side of this door, and she didn't like that so much. So let me get started on cutting these boards. Okay, so that went pretty well. I'm only doing one long board at a time to make sure that there aren't any mistakes before I do the second one. So what I did was I measured 5 feet 3 inches, and I cut just short of that so that the boards didn't get too long to fit in the 10-foot 6-inch width of the wall. I glued them together with that construction glue. I'll let this dry and then I'll do the second one. And in the meantime, I will vacuum because this wood dust is actually very slippery. Okay, so good morning. And my method of gluing the two boards end to end didn't work. Okay, so this liquid nails didn't dry. I left it to dry for a few hours, and it didn't dry, and it didn't hold the two lengths of boards together. So I'm going to try a different one, a different method. For those of you who aren't familiar with caulking guns, this is how you take out a tube and put a new tube in. You have to release this trigger here and pull it out, and then you take the old tube out And I'm going to try this Loctite Power Grab Heavy Duty. So you just have to cut a piece off of the tip here. And I'm just using a utility knife. And I just press down on it and roll the tip around, pressing down with the utility knife. And you also have to break a seal that is right down here. So I use a small screwdriver and just press it down in there. And I make sure I have some glue on the end, and that means it broke the seal. So in the caulking gun, I load the bottom in first, then the top, and then just squeeze the trigger, and this will push the bottom up in the tube, and then you can start squeezing the adhesive out. There it comes. So you can see that the adhesive keeps coming out because there's pressure still on the bottom of this tube. So to release it, just press this again and pull back on that lever. So that will relieve the pressure and the adhesive won't continue to come out. So this is the way you do any of these tubes, like caulking too, works the same way. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, I'm making so many mistakes. But what I think is that I want to share my methods that I'm using, and some of them will work and some won't. And so you have to figure out a different way of doing things. Plan B. So what I'm going to do is screw one board up on the top two brackets and then apply glue to the end and put the other one up against it and then screw that one in so that they'll be in place. I'll line them up and I'll be able to put a vice grip on the one side and just let it dry that way. Okay, so I made another design change. I decided to put one vertical piece just right in the middle because that way it is evenly spaced between those two middle brackets. If I were to make 3 divisions along each shelf with the vertical pieces, they would be different distances away from those 2 middle brackets, and I didn't think I would like that so much. In addition to that construction glue, I looked in my arsenal and I found that I had used this Titebond wood glue. I also pulled out this wood filler and I applied it in between the 2 shelves in the middle. I'll just let that dry and then I can sand it down. I might have to put another layer on it. And then I'll sand it down, and then when I paint, you won't see that crease in between the 2 lengths of boards as much. And here's a close-up of that wood filler in between the 2 lengths of boards. I also added a few small nails. And it's good to have different lengths of levels because these are short pieces. So I needed a fairly short level to make sure that they were vertically upright. And whenever I'm using these products, glues, wood filler, caulking, I try to always remember to wear a glove so I don't get it right on my skin. Okay, so I have all the vertical pieces in. Good thing I didn't record that because there were some choice words flying. I just had to cut and recut some of the pieces to make sure that when I put them in, that the shelves were still level. That's the reason I have this end propped up and this end I don't have propped up, because on this end, that very right side of the bottom shelf was sagging down a little too low, making it not level. So that's why I had to nail it up to the upright piece and then prop it up until all the glue dried. And it was the opposite for this side. The very left side of that lower board was a little too high, making it not level. So when I inserted the vertical piece is actually pushing it down enough to make the shelf level. Okay, so I'm going to have a lot of moldings to add to this shelf unit, and there will also be a molding at the very top to make it look like the top of the shelf unit. And in case you don't know, caulking is your best friend in projects like this, because the caulking will fill in any gaps, and you would have a really hard time then, once it's all painted, to be able to see any imperfections at that point. And then I'll be able to paint it, and then it will be finished. So I'll have to go to the Home Improvement Center tomorrow and get all of my molding so I can finish this up. And then you can see it complete. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.